on all this legislation that you've been hearing about that people thought, this is a wonderful thing, let's do this, but what's really come out of this legislation? All right, so first of all, impact by the numbers. So, oh my, what is this? Okay. So this is not my presentation. Okay. Let me, yeah, no, I guess what I gave you on my disc was not what was actually you were supposed to get. Okay.
That's all right.
I will talk to you.
You got it.
Fortunately, I sent it to myself on my phone. So always prepare for these kind of emergencies. All right. Hey, let me find it on my phone. See, I spent all this time making this really pretty thing. All right, that's okay. So, some numbers. So you've already heard about, kind of what some of the deaths and whatnot are. So every day, 130 people are dying from overdosing on opioids. So that includes, of course, the pain medications that you've heard about. But then, as you've heard, people frequently go from the pain medications then to the stuff on the streets. Okay. So what do we know more about that? So we do know that 21 to 29% of patients who are prescribed opioids end up misusing them. Okay. Let's be very clear about what misusing means. So based on the laws, if the doctor gives you a prescription, let's say you just had surgery, okay? You're gonna get Vicodin, right? And now we know that you can only get up to 7 days worth of that. All right. So it says 7, or you can take 1 every 6 hours for pain, for surgery. Okay. Now it's expected that you're going to take it for the surgical pain, and then once you go back to the doctor, you're doing better and whatnot. You're supposed to safely dispose of that. Most of us, what do? We keep it just in case, So when you use it again later for the just in case, that's actually considered misuse. When you give it to your friend, when he falls and breaks his ankle, but he doesn't want to go to the doctor, that's actually misuse. Okay? So that's what 21 to 29% go on to misuse the drugs. 8 to 12% though go on to develop an opioid use disorder. So that's the addiction that we've been hearing about. All right? And let me make something very clear to folks. And I know, somebody said earlier that people look at this as a moral failing or whatever. So a lot of people misuse them for a variety of reasons, recreationally or because you're saving it for whatever. When we talk about someone developing a dependence or an addiction, okay, I said it's only up to 12%. So it's not everybody. Most people are going to use them relatively appropriately. But some people's brains and bodies are just wired such that you were a perfectly good human being, you got something appropriately because of surgery, and the exposure to the opioids then flips a switch in your brain. And you move over into this horrible disease that's called addiction or dependence. Okay? But that's only 8 to 12% who move on to that. 4 to 6% of those who misuse the opioids then transition to heroin. Okay. Relatively small percentage of all the people that are getting opioids go on to abuse the heroin. Okay. But that's still a significant amount because Dr. Maitland showed you how many people are getting opioids, right? So 4 to 6% of those go on to develop or go on to use heroin. On the converse side of that, 80% of people who go on to get dependent on heroin started that path by using the prescription pills first. All right? So a big problem. Now, from 2016 to 2017, 45 states saw a 30% increase in opioid overdose deaths. Okay? 45 states. So those other 5 states were Midwestern states, including Ohio, Indiana, Pennsylvania, and Michigan. How much was our rise? 70%, okay?
Wow.
So we are a hotbed here of overdoses. And you saw that blue highway thing? One of the things that wasn't mentioned is that our two closest fentanyl manufacturing, so the home brewers, of fentanyl, are in the Pittsburgh area. It goes from Pittsburgh through northern Ohio and up into Michigan. So our opioid overdose deaths are most likely to involve fentanyl and carfentanil. And even when we're looking at our vital statistics here in Michigan, because the vast majority of what we call poisoning deaths or overdose deaths are related to opioids. But you'll sometimes see that folks had the methamphetamines or the cocaine was the product that they bought, but what caused the death was the fact that it had fentanyl or carfentanil mixed into it, okay? And it's real easy for us to get that in Michigan because we've got these major manufacturers in Pittsburgh that are making it. All right, so, couple other things that I wanted to let you know about in the numbers. We talked about it becoming the 5th vital sign and all that kind of thing, so I'm not going to beat that dead horse. But in the late 1990s, after that letter, which I can only suspect was somehow prodded by the drug companies, all right? Now, if I wanted to come up with a new miracle drug, Carmen's Cure, I have to do all these studies. I have to have at least 3 pivotal trials that I present to the FDA before I can get it approved. So isn't it curious that prior to that, all of the FDA approvals for these kind of opioids were primarily for end-of-life cancer-type pain to be given in the hospital. But a letter to the editor told everybody they're safe and they don't just need to be for cancer, and everyone goes, okay, where was the research? Okay? So with that letter, then the drug company said, wow, we were restricted to this niche market of inpatient cancer pain. So how can we make more money off of this stuff? All right. So the drug reps start going to the doctor's offices and say, hey, it's for more than cancer, So in 2000, I believe it was, yes, in 2001, Purdue Pharma, the manufacturers of OxyContin, for 1 year, their marketing budget just for OxyContin was $200 million just to market OxyContin beyond cancer pain. And in 1 year, they saw a 10 times increase in prescribing of OxyContin to over 6 million prescriptions in 2002, okay? So if you can spend $200 million over almost 20 years ago to market one pain pill, and now you can offer up $30 billion in a settlement, so believe me, that's not really hurting them, okay? Then what's the community impact? Clearly our medicines cost way more than they should, okay? And you go anywhere else in the world, and you take a look and see what the cost of their medicines are, and the medicines that they get everywhere else in the world are paid for on the backs of American consumers. Because nowhere else in the world do you pay this much for medications. And some of the biggest increases that we've seen in costs of meds have been related to not only this opioid crisis, but that naloxone that we've been talking about, okay? So in 2013, when the Detroit Wayne Mental Health Authority, and we've got Kareem here who's with that organization, although I know you guys changed your name recently, so I'm still gonna call it that. When we took a look at purchasing naloxone and providing it to first responders, to churches, to schools, to all this kind of stuff, and we took a look at it, and when we first started proposing this program, the naloxone was gonna cost us around $34 per kit, not even just for the medication. It was gonna come in a kit with all the stuff in it and blah, blah, blah. By the time we got around to purchasing it, it was gonna cost us $90 per kit because the opioid crisis was just getting to be a thing, okay? last year, because now all of a sudden there's brand names, right? It's been available as a generic for 20 years. All of a sudden there's brand names and there's atomizers and there's all this fancy stuff. And the kit can now cost you $300. All right? But if you're with a government agency and you're going to give it for free to, first responders, we'll give it to you for $189. All right? So, again, this is some of the impact that the opioid crisis is having. All right, so children and families. Right now, every 25 minutes in this country, a baby is born addicted to opioids and in opioid withdrawal. Okay? So typically in opioid withdrawal, the mother used during pregnancy. Most of our babies in the U.S. are being delivered in a hospital. People, despite the, there's some quick deliveries, right? You always have the mom that says, I was in labor for 38 hours. Okay? So for that 38 hours, I'm guarantee you she's not getting opioids in the hospital. Most of them have short half-life. So these babies that have been exposed to the opioids are being born in withdrawal, all right? So that's manageable, except that exposure and that what we call neonatal abstinence syndrome is also associated with things like breathing problems, lower lung volumes, longer stays in the hospital, seizures, low birth rate, learning difficulties after, okay?